Welcome, friends. Saturday, the 31st of August. It is approaching 8:05 here in Cape Town, Southern Africa. I am in the shadow of Table Mountain, where I sit here, the most beautiful part of the world, I can say, but a little bit hot. As you can see, I've broken out into a bit of a sweat here. I am thrilled today to be bringing on to the Lazarus Symposium four pretty iconic figures. And we're going to be uniting these influential voices in exopolitics, interstellar dynamics, and extraterrestrial phenomena for an enlightening journey into the forefront of cosmic exploration and disclosure. And this segment is going to draw from the complexities of recent galactic breakthroughs and narratives that challenge and expand our understanding of the cosmos within which we find ourselves. We're redefining humanity's place in the universe and illuminating potential pathways toward our interconnected future. First, I want to bring on Lazarus' favorite, renowned for his groundbreaking work on the physics of consciousness, Dan Winter, who investigates the fractal nature of the universe and never lets up on that incredible subject. And his research has profound implications for understanding how consciousness can be sustained and interconnected across interstellar realms. Dan, I'm going to bring you in first. There we go. Good to see you.
You look shinier than me, Sasha. You look good. I got a haircut butt.
I was just going to say, I'm going to take that up with you later after this call. I thought we had a deal, Dan. No.
I thought I could get younger, but I don't know.
No, it looks good. Let's have a look at you close up. Hang on. Let's have a look, friends. What do you think? What do you all think? Give us a vote.
Yeah, a little fuzzy. Glad to be here, Sasha. Glad to be here.
It's a great look. Second up, friends. My beloved friend, who I see far too little of in this world. Somebody's starting up, and it's not mine, I'm glad to say. Laura Eisenhower, who's a global alchemical and cosmic mythologist. Laura Eisenhower is committed, as her legion of fans know, to unveiling the truths of our cosmic origins and the covert agendas influencing our fragile world. Her recent efforts underscore the transformative power of the divine feminine in the cosmic awakening journey. Laura, so happy to have you back again.
So great to be here. Thank you so much for having me, Sasha. Hi, Dan. Good to see you.
Hi, Laura. You're looking younger too.
That's
yeah, Laura. Laura, does Dan's short haircut get your vote? Yes or no?
Absolutely, love it.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I'm great.
Okay. All right. It is now 1-1-1. We'll see how the score continues. All right, friends. Next up, Dr. Michael Salla, the icon, the legend, the pioneer in exopolitics, champion of the peaceful evolution of global society through the open revelation of extraterrestrial existence. And his focus includes deciphering the strategic impact of recent UFO disclosures and their potential to revolutionize global space policy. And he's one man who every time I finished an hour and a half or a 2-hour segment with us, like that just wasn't enough. Michael, so happy to have you back on Lazarus. Thanks for joining us.
I'm very happy to be back, Sasha. This is really an exciting time as we enter this kind of home stretch where we are going to be meeting the ETs, the crypto-terrestrials, and it's just a question of how that's going to happen, how that's going to play out, how that's going to be spun out, but it's inevitable.
Indeed, indeed. And last guest on the panel today, friends, Marina Jacobi, author and channeler. Marina Jacobi connects advanced extraterrestrial technology with human consciousness through her exploration of quantum manifestation. And she stresses the evolution of technology and consciousness as humanity gear up for an expanded cosmic role. Marina, very, very happy to have you on Lazarus Symposium. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me, and what a wonderful beauties in this symposium here. Thank you very much for having me. I really.
So, Marina, where are you based right now?
I am right now in Varna, Bulgaria for a bit, and then I'm coming back to US next year.
So you're there in Europe, and Dan, you're in south of France?
Yes, indeed. Mm-hmm.
Michael?
I'm in Key West, Florida, right out here in the midst of the Atlantian energies.
Oh, sensible man.
Cool.
And Laura, where are you?
I'm in Big Fork, Montana.
There we have it. Good. Well, a good international medley today, I think. Friends, there's a whole host of questions that I've got, And I know that we've got an audience watching live that are going to be already starting to throw questions at Dr. Sala, at Marina Jacobi, at Laura Eisenhower, and at Dan Winter. But I'm going to kick off by asking each of you on the panel, how do you perceive the current trajectory of humanity's understanding of its place in the cosmos, and what role does your particular area of expertise play in shaping this narrative? Laura, we'll start with you.
Oh, wow. Great question. Well, I really feel there's alterations taking place with, the zodiac and how that corresponds to our awakening DNA, what's, been dormant. The alchemical laws of creation have been, I wouldn't say not accessible, but not very easy to integrate because of reversal grid technology and a lot of manipulation of our DNA, all these dark cycles of history that have brought us to the here and now. And I feel like bifurcation is more like a breakup, with a bad partner, this inverted matrix that pushes tyrannical control and misuse of power disguised as something that people mistake for it caring about us. I feel like we're in this massive breakup, and we're all at different stages. Some really weren't born in alliance with that, but came here to, help show the way. With it being about an inner activation and understanding of how these nefarious forces have been siphoning and harvesting our creative imagination and life force and energy to engineer and battery up artificial timelines that we don't need to consent to or participate in. So I see this sort of breakthrough happening, but in a very traumatic way for people. And it's sort of like the red flags you would see that are now bonfires. Like literally, they are so obvious to a lot more individuals. And this war on consciousness is really, playing out on the world stage in determining what is truth, what is artificial, what is a facade, what is a psyops, what is a false flag, and just looking at the planetary alignments and the greater cosmic intelligence and how it knows how to repair itself, but how these inverted storylines are based in the planetary alignments in order to hijack our ability to move through the growth periods and initiations. So I feel with the alchemical laws of the ether element, how that connects to the mitochondrial DNA and the nucleic acids of our DNA, which are elemental, there's a massive purging and purification process to these aspects of ourself. And the zodiac alterations are actually dissolving a lot of the Saturn squares, a lot of where this tyrannical control, this dark octave of Saturn has inserted itself in the minds and hearts of humans. And it's now turning into the higher octave, which is self-mastery, which is allowing these alchemical laws to dissolve the frequency fences and help us to remember our divine blueprint and the miracles and magic that we're truly made of, to manifest a beautiful future and not consent or give our life force away to the powers that want to be, that only have stolen power. So to me, it's a massive breakup, like a divorce.
Beautiful. And Dr. Sala, what is your take on humankind's sort of health check, essentially, of humanity at the moment, and what is the work that you're doing? How is that impacting the awakening process that is palpably underway?
Really interesting question, Sasha. Humanity, I mean, we are emerging out of a kind of tribalistic history where we are easily manipulated by the deep state into all kinds of political violence against one another. And now people are slowly being introduced to the idea of non-human intelligence, of either extraterrestrials or cryptoterrestrials or some kind of higher dimensional beings that are part of this UFO phenomenon, which is being thrust on the consciousness of people by the legacy media. Now, why they're doing that? Why all of a sudden, after like 60, 70 years of the legacy media, of officials and the intelligence community kind of like gaslighting people that the UFO issue wasn't genuine, it was something to be dismissed. Now all of a sudden it's front and center. It's something that everyone in the kind of professional classes, many universities, people from kind of all walks of life are suddenly being introduced to this idea that UFOs are real, and it's a question of what's behind them. And I think this is a part of this struggle between the different factions vying over where humanity is going to end up, where we're going to go. On the one hand, you've got the deep state, the powers that want to be, that are trying to manipulate us into a new control system, something that will perpetuate the kind of current financial system, the current level of technological development, where they can just manipulate us into one contrived conflict after another, false flag alien events, false flag crypto terrestrial attacks. And on the other hand, you've got this kind of like Earth Alliance working with the positive militaries that want to nudge us in the direction of this Star Trek future, where we partner with galactic civilizations into this incredible future where the advanced tech is going to come out. It's going to be used to transform our environment, transform our lifestyles. And so there's this struggle happening behind the scenes, and we see that kind of reflected. I mean, this kind of the fractal nature of the universe is very appropriate to understand the kind of the relationship between geopolitics and exopolitics. What we're seeing happening right now in the Ukraine, Israel, Palestine, that's a kind of reflection of this bigger struggle behind the scenes in terms of the exopolitical struggle between the Earth Alliance, the White Hats, and the deep state and the remnants of these dark extraterrestrial forces, these kind of like satanic forces that have long suppressed us. So that's all being resolved right now. But what's good is that we are clearly on this trajectory to emerge in this new reality where this kind of like positive future, this Star Trek future, is going to be unveiled. But we're just going through the kind of birthing pangs of that.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you very much. Marina Jacobi, what is your 2-minute or 3-minute piece overview, Eagle's Eye, on the health check of humanity, and also speak into that, the piece about technology and how that can and will impact the upswing, the upshift?
Well, thank you very much. Right now, the way I was explained to me, we are merging realities within the realities. Everything is actually coming into this basically live chessboard that everybody's gonna play out their final game. This will be resolved, they told me, in the next couple of years, back and forth with different things. Everything that is beyond the frequency of human consciousness of a high evolution will actually reproject itself and create realities that are in a lower vibrational sequence that these people will not be able to ascend. When in that reality is fifth dimensional and above, eventually we're going to become interstellar race. And in that merging, because it's reality within a reality, you're going to see the birth now of these new technologies that are going to be coming based on your vibration and what you projected in your reality and what you created. You may see basically reprinting of hearts, or using high-tech organic intelligence to actually mimic frequency sound and rebuild the body of somebody, or the cellular memory, or projecting a human consciousness certain frequency to basically enhance or rebirth and restructure some kind of an organ. This is what's coming for humanity, and the people that are going to see this timeline of realities, they have to be in the frequency of their own consciousness to be able to reproject that into their own hologram, which is the ascension protocol that is connecting all of us in the future.
Very good. Beautifully put. Thank you. And that dovetails perfectly in a sense, to the kind of math of the one and only Dan Winter, who has hacked his hair off against my advisement, it must be said. And he was just about getting to that point where I thought you are the bastard love child of Terence McKenna and Gandalf, right?
Could be a real hippie. No. Oh.
All right. Well, you're looking great. You're doing something right. Your health check on humanity 2024.
Yeah, we're trying to make a very simple summary here that, we agree with Elena and Michael and others who see the Nebu, Draco, and Greys having been ejected from the solar system largely. And the bigger conflict, we see it in the context of the ensouled versus the soulless. And actually the health check I have is bad in the sense that we're breeding 1 billion soulless young people who are going to bed with Bluetooth and Wi-Fi and chopping up their aura to such an extent that they're not going to lucid dream. And I have a slideshow prepared about the physics of why there's proof that that means they're losing their soul. So once we understand, we have this project. It's called physicsofsoul.com, 1 million views, 20 documentaries, whatever. And it's very simple that when the DNA is in presence of the right kind of coherent, call it the physics of bliss, the physics of sacred space, there's a braiding, ringing, implosive action. And squeezed out the center is called coherent longitudinal interferometry, literally measurably the physics of whether you can lucid dream, dreaming tracks, song lines, was called Kesjan body, rainbow light body, Ba from the Ka. So that coherent longitudinal emanation literally, measurably, electrically, not just determines if you can lucid dream, but determines measurably, and electrical engineers can teach this, whether you take memory through death. And we see that skill to know the physics of ensoulment as the only way to navigate that horrible tightrope between AI and soullessness versus the path of bliss and psychokinesis for humanity. So whether it's the Draco loss of long-term memory, hint soullessness, or the Draco and the Borg and the Greys, to understand the conflict and to give a practical leverage to young people requires teaching the serious science of what is a soul. And that's the slideshow I have prepared. So
very good. We'll get to that in a few minutes, but that was beautifully encapsulated. My own take, Dan, in my sort of middling years, is that and looking back at the shit show of reality as I've perceived it in half a century, for me, the one takeaway is that the devil always serves God's design. And so when we talk about this new influx of soullessness, and certainly this outright siege against the ensouled, and with the younger generations as well, this systemic overthrow and takeover in that sense. Is that not simply symptomatic of what you would standardize as a bifurcation process happening at the kind of psycho-civilizational level, a very needful process? That's my point.
Yeah, it forces us to learn the physics that if the kids do not have access to sacred space and bliss process, electrically, they won't get an immune system. They won't lucid dream. Their aura won't be coherent. They won't have a soul. They can't do any of the fun stuff that advanced ETs define as the difference between AI and Borg civilizations versus the self-empowered. So once we learn the physics of soul, we can walk the tightrope. That's my point, actually.
Very good. Okay. So, Michael Sala, let's start with you. Please describe for us a false flag event that you mentioned recently involving crypto-terrestrials rather than extraterrestrials. And let's riff off that.
Sure. Well, the crypto-terrestrials are these civilizations that live under the earth. I mean, you have both the human-looking civilizations, you have the non-human-looking ones. I mean, there's the ant people, there's the Sasquatch, there's the insectoids, reptoids, and so forth. And what's become clear to me is that these civilizations have indicated that due to the kind of like awakening of humanity and the kind of like whether you call it the ascension or the awakening or the growth of Gaia, that they are going to be introducing themselves more to surface humanity, and that they've been introducing their craft more. People are being allowed to kind of visit their civilizations more. You have a lot of orbs from their craft. And this is something that the powers that were, the predator class, they're very aware of that. And so what they decided to do was that they would try to co-opt that emergence, that kind of rising human consciousness where we would reconnect with our inner earth crypto-terrestrial cousins, that they would co-opt that and turn it into a invasion of some kind. So we've been seeing over the last couple of years now just more and more of these anomalous situations like you had in Peru with the children being abducted. You have the sightings in Vegas, in Miami. You have these strange events involving these creatures that no one knows who they are. And you have also, at the same time, more and more publications coming out about crypto-terrestrials, because I think that's what the deep state is hoping to do, is to like kind of do something unexpected, because people have long been aware, due to Carol Rose and Stephen Greer, Werner von Braun's warning about a false flag alien event. So many people are aware that, okay, the deep state has had this plan to pull off an invasion from space that they would pin on extraterrestrials, but no one really is prepared for crypto-terrestrials, because the big thing is that the deep underground military bases all over the world. I just did an interview with Gene Decode, and he estimates that there are 5,000 of these deep underground bases, these DUMBs, and many of these bases have very big cloning experiments, very big cloning projects, and they're cloning hundreds of thousands, even millions of clones that can be used for staging a kind of false flag alien invasion. Now, that doesn't mean it's going to happen, but it'll be a crypto-terrestrial invasion, which is intended to kind of like co-opt the genuine crypto-terrestrials from introducing themselves to surface humanity. So that's the struggle right now.
Right. It's very interesting because Dan and others have been saying, and I've heard this from a lot of very, very solid sources in this pretty enigmatic sphere, that the Draco element in that sense have departed, and 2020, 2021 was absolutely shift point. But it sounds to me like if we've got millions of souls being kind of colonized underground into these kind of drone armies and what have you, what was the point of sending the Dracos off world if we've still got all this detritus under the surface of reality to deal with? I mean, yeah, if anyone on the panel wants to speak to this, please do. I think, Marina, I knew you were going to put your hand up. Yeah, crack on.
Okay, because I have live channeling, literally they said that is not going to go the way they're planning. And they talk about some kind of a sound coherent resonance. That sound coherent resonance will be implemented within the interstellar, intergalactic spacecrafts when it converts in a certain spinning circle of a sequences. Is going to be a laser point to spread out like almost like the sun rays. And when that resonance is being given into the interplanetary layer, they talk about a layer coherent resonance. I see it right above the ground, maybe like 10 feet. When they try to come out, if anything like this to happen, there will be some kind of a seizure within their adrenal pineal section, and it will not go exactly the way it was planned. So that's the answer.
Good. I think we all agree with that much. Laura, did you want to jump in on any of this?
Sure. Yeah. I don't think anything's going to go according to plan. I feel there's so much that I wouldn't say the word blindsided, but I mean, these beings cannot perceive of what our higher intelligence can perceive of. The AI can only mimic, match, record, and imitate. And it requires our vibration to be pretty darn low for it to even work. And I feel that when we look at being soul-centered, that is the 5D. And being soul-centered means there's discernment, means that your intuition is strong, means that your frequency is an override frequency and can de-weaponize and offset a lot of the AI and the manipulations and the clone races. All that's activated to sort of act in this, kind of way isn't really going to get very far if we are shielded in our consciousness from linking into it. And I feel a lot of the things people have been inhaling, we've been inhaling, and what's gotten into a person's system, with the antenna being formed to link into a lot of these different events that take place, as long as you're able to break the mind control aspect, I feel that is the strongest of all weapons. And that's what keeps alive everything else and allows it to spread throughout the nervous system and separate the soul matrix from the physical vessel. That if a person can break that down, the body becomes spiritualized and begins to remove and transmute or alchemize a lot of these things that we've taken in. So there's nothing that they can really do when we've already overcome a certain vibratory response and reaction to all that is bombarding us. Yeah. And simply shielding, I feel, is enough. And a lot of individuals are doing that. And that override frequency, I feel, is like the 5D tower that overrides the 5G, and everything is a simulation, and the last-ditch efforts for them to create a sort of theatrical performance that is no longer being run by the nefarious forces that have been so prevalent on the planet, and that they were cornered so that they wouldn't be able to leave, and no new nefarious beings would be able to come in. And I feel that with the Guardian forces, the Earth Alliance, and the positive military units, it has like cornered them. And that's why we see so much theater, because they're kind of dealing with it behind the scenes, but not wanting, humanity to, see this total takedown just yet. And I feel it's a major bridge right now between the false world collapsing and the new one emerging. And whatever last ditch efforts they could do are not going to succeed.
Very good. Dan, you've got a short presentation can you kick that off now?
Sure, that's great. Yes. Share screen. Okay.
I will bring it up.
Select a Chrome tab window. Yes, it's a keynote. Here it is. Is that now? This will share. See if this works. Are you seeing my screen?
Yep. Here we go.
Okay. So, by the way, I love Marina's idea about a frequency signature. We know the frequency signature that triggers a bliss in binaural beat, and we think that's key to the physics of rapture, which is very much like Marina's thought. And Laura's right; it is alchemizing. So, yes, this is what I was saying before, that we see the big picture between the Nebu and the Borg, and the galaxy politics now as literally between soul and soullessness. And this short series of visuals is about using the Atlantean fire crystal toy stone, its history and karma, as a key to the big picture in humanity of how AI dominated versus the actual physics of ensoulment. So we're looking here at the center, and Sasha has his gorgeous giant Vajra there too. But I did this interview with Elena, and she's showing us as a clicker at the center of the fire crystal or Mercury vortex, but a fire crystal at the center of the Vajra. And that clicker is a pulse wave. It's a square wave that implodes it, and it projects a longitudinal coherence out the end. So there's many pictures of these things. You've seen the analysis. I did many interviews with Elena about this physics. So this brings us to firecrystal.com, where we're actually teaching the physics of Atlantean fire crystals. Elena did a fabulous summary of Atlantean history recently. We just want to go deeper into the key physics, which is the fire crystal physics. And that's from firecrystal.com. We have learned that what triggers the fire crystal is a very particular frequency series, not unlike Marina was just talking about, called phase conjugate pump wave. And when you piezoelectrically pump that into the crystal, you get this form of implosion, which drives a coherent longitudinal wave out the center. And that longitudinal wave out the center is actually, let me just see here, I'm on the wrong screen. Just give me a second. As in pyramidwirelesspower.com, the dimensions of the pyramid so accurately couple those frequencies, actually the Schumann phase conjugate pump wave, it's called the Hummer. And when that conjugate pump wave cascade is coupled piezoelectrically in the pyramid or the fire crystal, that implosion drives the coherent longitudinal out the center into globalwirelesspower.com, pyramidwirelesspower.com. Similarly, in the fire crystal, if and only if the accurate dimensions, three-dimensionally, are piezoelectrically precisely tuned to that equation in 3D, can that cascade implode through the Planck threshold, projecting the coherent longitudinal. For example, the famous Koski-Frost experiment, after the phase conjugate pump wave hit it, it changed scale dramatically and then made 800 times its own weight in gravity. We have the book on that at fractalfield.com/propulsion. So we want to talk about the frequency signature that is the key to this, because if we understand how that wave works, it's literally a 3D caduceus, and that's actually the trigger wave. And so what we published was that the PlanckFire.com equation calculates these frequencies right here as being the perfect implosion series. And interestingly, Dan Willis recently published these very closely related frequencies, 10, 20, 30, 50, 80, which is simple Fibonacci, which you see how close they are to the actual equation for precise charge collapse for how fire crystals work. And you see, we're going to get to the point that if we understand that, then we could understand the physics of how we get a soul by imploding DNA with bliss. So this is about the relationship between Fibonacci leads to golden ratio. So when Marcel Vogel was holding his crystal, he was using his breath as the phase conjugate pump wave. But the problem is that the crystals whose sides are not parallel cannot be accurately tuned. That's the problem. To accurately tune them, you actually have to have this perfect phase conjugate pump wave trigger device. And the ideal device is piezofire.com, which actually can put this exact frequency signature into, we use it for healing and pain control here, but it's a perfect crystal firing device. Exact analog parallel here. Tesla started with a carbon arc. Here's the carbon arc right here, the Buckminster fullerene, in which he learned to project scalar longitudinal plasma by studying the carbon arc. And the carbon, ideally a fullerene, is a conjugator. You see how the shape of that device looks like the famous Star Mother crystal. It's actually simply a phase conjugator. So this gaining energy during charge collapse, we're going to see the physics of how you get a soul, teaches us the hygiene for young people. So phase conjugate charge collapse, cause of gravity, cause of soul, cause of bliss, cause of life force, cause of consciousness itself. An example, Aum, when you say Aum correctly in spectrum analyze, the curve you get is a phase conjugate pump wave. That's why you get bliss. And this is the mathematics from plankfire.com. We're not going to do all the mathematics, obviously. But the side view of that fire crystal, we see here, beam me up, Scotty, the lithium niobate, the dilithium crystals. So if we understand that crystal, we can understand the physics of ensoulment. Here's how we make the phase conjugate pump wave in the body. This is the Mayer wave, the sacrocranial harmonics. And these are the same harmonics, the Schumann harmonics and the breath harmonics. And these are those same harmonics, the same equation in the brain wave, a phase conjugate pump wave. If you can make these brain waves, then you can implode your DNA, have the bliss required to get a soul. So the coupled dimensions of the crystal are the same as the coupled dimensions of the pyramid. So the parallel sides crystals enable the phase conjugation. And what we say is that the famous Hebrew alphabet was actually the tetrahedral symmetry views of that plasma domain. And the Jewish tradition might say that the tetrasymmetry is the solution to turning AI into consciousness, but it's not. It's a superset. We'll explain more than a minute. So the core slide here is that the central problem for the evolution of technology among races struggling with AI versus children who have a soul, people who specifically inherited soulless Draco blood through Enlil Yahweh, the Draco. And by the way, we're not saying Draco blood isn't powerful. It's powerful. But the issue is, who has the soul? So historical credit here, Elena Denon says Enlil's father Anu was bribed to marry the Draco, Enlil's mother, and came to regret it. As a result, Anu's Anak, Sumerian is Anak empire, was blackmailed from the solar system for millennia until he had a galactic federation of the Draco-eating Nagamok allies, enough to eject the Siakar, Enlil, and the Greys, not just from the solar system, but from the galaxy. If Anne Rice is correct, Enlil Yahweh, the vampire drac, is probably the largest plasma parasite, literally a grim reaper in the history of the solar system. So to understand the difference between what's a parasite and what has access to bliss is the physics of soul.com. We can articulate the symptoms of what it is to gain and sustain a soul. The soul is specifically the known and measurable coherent longitudinal EMF the body produces and radiates by bliss implosion compression, the Ba from the Ka, rainbow light body, Kesjan body. This is illustrated by the university documented phase conjugate pump wave frequencies known to trigger lucid dreaming, exactly like Therify.net does, see luciddreamteam.com. So ability to lucid dream, coherently embed in the longitudinal array dreaming track, is probably one of the best indicators of whether you or your child can take memory through death, have a soul. The second major indicator of the presence of soul is the ability to make the known phase conjugate pump wave coherent brain waves, which make bliss, theta, alpha, gamma cascades, flameinmind.com, just the way we measured Jean-Charles Moyen ability to teleport. So these piezo couples to the EKG and the HRV, and this is sacrocranial physics. So all of these are the exact same frequency recipe for implosion, literally the physics of soul. Here's the cascade. Here's the harmonics that make Kundalini. And this is how it works. The transverse wave goes down the implosion vortex and propagates a longitudinal wave. And it's that wave that propagates efficiently enough into the array, the fractal longitudinal array called sacred space dreaming track songline. And here is the gravitobiology equation showing that longitudinal wave is the physics of gravity waves and the physics of bioactive fields. And here's the same implosion defining the origin of the nuclear age. The critical mass, obviously, the nuclear critical mass changes when you go to sacred sites. This is why. So basically, the superset of the tetrasymmetry was the hypercube symmetry of the Alphanum. This is, more complicated here. But you see that, so in the movie Contact, they were teaching us how to implode. And actually, that movie is about lucid dreaming. So DNA becomes a torus, the tetrasymmetry. And so here is phase conjugation in the DNA directly. There is implosion happening in the DNA. It's literally a pump wave. So the physics of soul is actually the DNA needs to be in the presence of bliss, sacred space. And the opposite of that is the electrosmog, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth hell that a billion children are going to bed in every night. That's the problem. Here's the coherence of the love affecting DNA measurably, the Braid algorithm DNA. This slideshow goes on a bit too long, Sasha. We don't have time for the rest of the slideshow. But here's phase conjugation light. Here is just to finish. This is the university study on which frequencies trigger lucid dreaming. Here is those same frequencies triggering lucid dreaming, literally a soul at therify.net. Here's us measuring this same cascade of frequencies, triggering measured teleportation with Jean-Charles. Again, I think this slideshow is a bit too long, so I'm going to have to cut it there. But you see, where I'm getting to with this is that the galactic politics right now, the Greys, the Dracos, the Nebu, versus, those who live only by AI and those who live by knowing their children must have a bliss process to have a soul. The Aboriginals will write about one thing. If you can teach your young people to have a bliss experience, then you have culture. Otherwise, no. And that means that culture defines the ability to make a soul in your kids. Now, if your kids are going to sleep in electrosmog buildings full of Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, and they never get access to Schumann, and they never have a bliss experience, they never get grounded, the kids are never going to lucid dream. So you have billions of children right now who are losing their soul because we cannot teach what a soul is. Physicsofsoul.com. I said that is the critical tightrope turning point of today's galaxy politics. Anyway,
beautiful. Thank you, Michael. The physics of bliss,
yes.
Mechanics of ascension, hyperdimensional physics. Is this likely to become the mainframe academia in days ahead? In your view?
Definitely, people will need to understand the ways in which consciousness can be transferred from one body to another. The technology exists for that. We know that Alex Collier was talking about that in the early 1990s. He talked about the DAOs or the Nebu being able to extract the consciousness of children and put them into some kind of little box and basically take them off planet, and this was part of a trade. So exactly what is it that they are transferring? Now this seems to be some kind of transfer of consciousness, and that seems to also be part of what is happening in many of the secret space programs. We have Tony Rodriguez, we have Randy Kramer, we have Daryl James. We have quite a few people who have been part of the secret space program say that they have signed contracts where their consciousness is actually, they give permission for their consciousness to be used for a particular period of time, like 20 years or so, for these programs. So this is where the technology again is being used for being able to exploit people's consciousness for the benefit of these programs. Now, this is where we get into the very interesting question of, well, and I guess Dan or Laura might want to address this, is, how do we distinguish between a soul, which is a fractal of the universal consciousness? How could that be actually extracted out of the body? Is the soul just kind of like sitting above all of this, watching the consciousness be transferred? Because I think there is this difference between soul and consciousness. So I think that's going to be something that's going to really be very, very important in the years ahead, as people understand that, this consciousness or this technology exists to be able to extract consciousness. But does that mean that the soul is actually being manipulated? And I think that's very different, because I think the soul is connected to this kind of greater omniverse, and that things like bliss and being able to be a fractal embodiment of the universal consciousness is important. But I think those are really important areas to explore.
Very good. Thank you. Marina, did you want to comment to any of this?
I actually was told about that from the Council of Nine regarding the extraterrestrials. There is a technologies like this. I'm sure there's more technologies only than that. But what they told me, one of the technologies is called hyperspace hologram, where you have organic intelligence when you get in this space. Is like a virtual reality room. Is actually can catch your coherent resonance from your thoughts and emotions, and you actually are literally projecting meta reality. It literally looks like this. But they also told me that they actually you can fragment part of your soul. And when we all know the movie Avatar, how the soldier was sent into that planet. Literally, that technology exists, where you have, again, organic intelligence put certain sequence when they know the stargate of the pulsation of particular planet Earth has a certain sequences, and they knew that this was artificial planet. That's how we end up in this tyranny. And in order for them, there is true, I totally agree with Dr. Sala. There is technology that they can basically take off the soul. I was told about that, and they can trap it and they can do this stuff. But at the same time, the same technology or similar, it could be used for if a planet is being taken over, the good guys basically can actually send a fragment of somebody's soul, like a soldier, within the AI program, in order to maintain that connection between the extraterrestrials platforms of spacecrafts or technologies, in order to download information within the structure of that prison, the way the planet Earth was. So these technologies could be used both ways. So it's very important for us to understand that each technology has positive and negative inputs within everything we do. And this is exactly what I was told, that we cannot dismantle completely the artificial intelligence, but there's another version of it, which is organic, which is basically to advanced computer. And they said, but what is very difficult, because the artificial intelligence is one of probably the most advanced technological system in the universe, and people don't know what they're doing, and it's got to be very carefully done when we're actually playing with that. And this is where the timelines of separation is happening. We have to be aware the difference of AI and organic intelligence is sentient, will never hurt, will actually coexist with something. Because in order for us to penetrate certain structures, we need organic intelligence to be very precise on certain modalities in order for you to enter. We're not talking that our soul and body can actually restructure the DNA, and your body is like a spacecraft that can open portals. But the problem with that is that when there is an artificial planet or a system, only your body and soul cannot just enter, and you need a protection of mimicking the technology that was used there, almost like you going in a battle, you need a protection because everybody else has the big guns. So it's very complex, actually, but I agree with everything you guys saying, because there are different aspects of this stuff that we have to really pay close attention to. It is more to the story than only the dark side or the white side. It's gray in between.
Yes, very good. Laura, artificial intelligence or manufactured soul, so to speak, versus organic sentience, and the idea that these can both coexist in this plane. Is that something that you see as a possibility? Just riff on that.
Yeah. So artificial intelligence, it seems that there's a way to bind it to DNA. There's just a way to, just begin to assimilate, into the human that separates them from the soul matrix. But if going back to kind of the question, if you have a strong soul agreement, you're going to eventually override it. How do some SSP folks get their memories back that begin to be whistleblowers, that are maybe the anomalies in their eyes that seem to break through it? It seems that their soul and higher mind connection is able to bypass having their mind wiped. So it seems unconsciousness, amnesia, and just all these different mechanisms that have been put in place to yank us into this assimilation can be, broken down. Even the Christ consciousness is able to dissolve black goo. I mean, there's things that we might think are permanent, but if that soul has a strong enough agreement and has enough converging moments in its life experience to answer to that, then that begins to break down the ability for the AI to succeed in that particular person's, journey. So when we look at it on a bigger picture level, all species eventually magnetize back to source. On the larger picture level, there's beings that have compromised themselves, became assimilated into the AI, and are looking to break that. So I feel like the soul matrix within ourselves, which is moving into the 5D and beyond, has a magnetic attraction to return to source, and that the soul journey will go through different experiences and maintain, different memories that a life review will provide. And also, a life review that one can have while still maintaining the physical vessel is strong enough to begin to break down that AI, which really, really requires the assimilation, whether that's an agreement, whether you're my lab, it's something that only the individual can determine for themselves. That automation or that roboticness, what they're trying to do to our children, getting them all gender confused when it's a time of awakening to our androgyny or our divine blueprint of both the masculine and feminine looking to integrate. There are all these ways to capture the consciousness in order to prevent the natural growth periods that cosmic and natural law and alchemical laws provide. So anytime I feel that bond is broken, that is when one begins to expose this stuff, and it only can be used in nefarious ways until it expires. And then that organic AI that could be more useful for, injuries, accidents, used in a responsible way while we're in our spiritual development, would mean that we have consolidated our soul experiences, breaking the amnesia, and we're not going to do what happened in Atlantis or allow the Dark Lords to succeed in, wiping us out. We are in a process of healing Tiamat Earth, a wounded consciousness, a planetary system that's been working on healing itself. So they keep creating trigger events to keep people in a trauma loop, to then have the AI assimilate into a negative polarity of reaction instead of unity consciousness. That's where the divide and conquer is really, really starting to invade the consciousness in an AI kind of way. And if we look at war on consciousness, that is the war for the soul that gets lost from the individual, but then magnetizes back to itself eventually on down the timeline somewhere.
Very good. Brilliant. I was just thinking today how that this recent political shit show that's playing out in the United States, which of course impacts the whole world by extension, with Trump and Kennedy, for instance, as a career familial Democrat, switching over and endorsing and supporting Trump. And then today I saw that venal little toad of a man, George Bush Jr., I see that he's now thrown his lot in behind Kamala Harris. So with this, what's going on with the hemispheres switching in the geopolitical domain? Dan, I'll bring you in here on this subject, but what the hell is going on when we see these huge archetypal memes playing out, which are clearly scrambling the hemispheres and seem to be orchestrating dystopia of the highest order of magnitude. Is that a healthy sign of a breakdown of the shit show, or is that a sign of serious distress? And I want to take this toward the subject, toward the human being the universal or the galactic genome playing out on terra firma, and what's happening above is kind of taking place in the theater below.
Yeah, I'm always a little reluctant to get. I mean, for me, I was part of the 30% of USA who turned off CNN for months after Trump got elected because of the feeling of nausea was overwhelming. But that's neither here nor there. One thing I will say is that the concept of democracy, where people are able to become self-steering, is absolutely central, which is to say the priceless concept of individual freedom. And I know that's certainly warped today, but the sacredness of the fact that people must evolve to being self-steering is essential. It is a central part of when you die or when you lucid dream and you're out of your body. How do you steer? We have a very good physical sense of that, actually, and it's very democratic. You are a plasma donut, literally at that moment, and how you steer that plasma donut, ball lightning, is very good with telepathy for the same reason. So this gets back maybe to a previous concept here. The center of consciousness is the point of implosion, called the phase conjugate point, but the soul is how that inhabits the local array. And the larger the array you can inhabit, literally the longest wave of memory, which is why you cannot be a species with amnesia. If you want to have a soul, we've got to recover the ancient memory. Hancock was right. So I think that the sacredness of democracy and what that means, some aspect of freedom of speech, the fact that inside your aura will never be self-steering or take responsibility for itself unless that implosion is enabled within. And literally, the definition of freedom inside is the same as the physics of bliss. So we've always said, if you have access to some form of bliss, that is the first time you are not a parasite, because your aura has its own source of charge. The same would apply to young people. When enough people have access to bliss, that is the physics of the reason beehives can navigate. Royal blood is present. The beehive can swarm. Otherwise, no. It's called the body politic. If you don't have a body, so the body polis biologically is the collective bliss cocoon, which by definition is navigable. And by the way, by definition, eliminates the need for government.
Very good. Very good. No need for government. Is that where we're headed with our galactic interfacing, Michael?
Well, there's going to be a need for governance. So I think what we're seeing now is that people, many of them for the first time, are being forced to make a choice, that they are looking at what's happening around them. They're looking at the policies that are being passed in the United States, in Europe, and elsewhere, but particularly in those two areas. A lot of people that have been coasting, assuming that political leaders are making responsible choices, that the mass media or the legacy media is very informed on world events. Their world has been turned upside down because they see the legacy media is just putting out these agendas that are serving the deep state. They see major politicians trying to push these policies that no one wants. No one wants for there to be kind of this unlimited funding for Ukraine to fight this senseless war against Russia that everyone knows they're going to lose eventually anyway. People don't want to fund what the Israelis are doing in Palestine. So people are being forced to make a choice. And of course, you have the whole COVID thing, the pandemic thing. And so I think that's what's happening now, is that people are being forced to look at what's being done around them, and they're saying no. And that is really amazing, because that's what's led to the collapse in trust in the mass media. It led to collapse in trust in elected political leaders. And where do people go? Well, they go to the alternative sites. They go to your channel, Sasha, mine, Dan's, Laura's. They go to find these alternative voices because they don't trust the mass media anymore, or elected politicians. And I think this is part of the awakening. And as they come to our sites, as they come to us, we're putting out a very different frequency to people that they were previously watching on, watching on the legacy media and so forth. We're putting out a truth frequency, and that's opening them up to this greater cosmic reality. So now all of a sudden people are being opened up to the possibility of, well, there's galactic civilizations, there's inner earth civilizations, there's this hyperdimensional awareness. And so, I mean, we are in the midst of this incredible birthing process.
Right, but if this plane of existence upon which we find ourselves is a fractal, and is a kind of from the cascade from the heavens, really the question really is, if we're in such a fucked up dystopian mess on terra firma, is this reflective of what's taking place at the galactic level? I mean, in congruence with fractality.
Absolutely. I mean, that is what is happening. I mean, at this larger galactic level, I mean, you have on the one hand the Draco, the Nebu, who have their own great cosmic galactic empires struggling against the positive extraterrestrial civilizations, the Andromeda Council, the Galactic Federation of Worlds, the Intergalactic Confederation. And so there's wars. I mean, Elena Danana is describing these wars of liberation happening around the galaxy right now. So absolutely, we are a fractal embodiment or representation of what's happening at that big picture.
Which brings me to the seminal question, which is, isn't it you and I, us, the resurrection of the angelic human, as I would spin it? Aren't we the absolute alpha omega? Are we not the antidote to the galactic shit show as well as the one here? Isn't that the point, that our full and true coherent resurrection is the antidote and absolves all of this galactic hoo-ha into the next iteration of, as Dan would have it, a blissful expansion or expression?
You know, Sasha, we were teaching for 20 years that the human race was the vaccine for the Orion Wars. And then when Elena said that they used the same tall grays that deceived Eisenhower Truman, they snuck them out of here, used literally a virus, inoculated the Nebu hive queen, and all of the Greys Nebu collapsed in the Orion Empire. We were the vaccine for the Orion Wars. But actually, the vaccine is the fact that the genetic diversity here is so maximal that if we do learn real bliss process, we become really very high in the pyramid of psychokinesis.
Very good. I mean, I want to bring Marina in to get some real-time channeling on this, but Laura, as we've dragged your great-granddaddy into the melee here, the deception that occurred when he was holding the highest office in the world, is that a very significant part of our history?
Well, I've learned a lot. I mean, I have learned so much, and I have been open-minded along the way, even if it's not something I want to hear. I have a strong agreement before I incarnated, and remote viewers and healers and psychics all throughout my life. And this book that was handed to me describes me being an influence on his administration and warning him, a part of a galactic crew, and that I decided to come in along with, many others that were going to bring about the truth. And his alliance with Val Thor was very significant. There was an unconditional surrender agreement that took place in 1952 under Truman, and every president since then had inherited that. But he went against that covertly with the help of Val Thor by establishing the White Hats, the Earth Alliance, and petitioning to the Guardians. So Elena and others have said that MJ-12 signed it behind his back. When he was president, there were 20 levels of top secret above him. And I feel one of my favorite quotes from him is that people want peace so bad that the governments had better get out of their way and let them have it. And I really feel, there was deception with these beings. And he was in a very, very difficult situation after the Second World War. The Admiral Byrd trying to invade the Antarctica underground base, and then the flyover in 1952 of the UFOs. And that was basically when the surrender happened. So he entered office in 1953 and supposedly ordered an invasion on Dulce Underground military base in 1954, the same year that people have said that he signed the Greada Treaty. So he was trying to take out the Greys, and then 1958 or later tried to invade Area 51. That wasn't successful. So I think, his final speech was very cryptic and has to do with us, has to do with a knowledgeable and aware citizenry that I'm sure, along the way he was manipulated to a certain degree, saw through it, did all he could, just like us on the human level. And that the biggest message I feel coming through him, and that I experienced growing up and just in my connection to him, is that it's about us, that there are advanced souls. There are powerful missions here that the government structure is going to have to break down. It doesn't serve us. It's mind control. It's governing through sleeper agents, Manchurian candidates, people with altars, people that have been groomed by three-letter organizations. We're not even dealing with, a government that's looking out for the people, and that that part of it would need to collapse, and that there would be guides and those that would bridge these two bifurcating timelines in order to get as many on board as possible through the use of benevolent and helpful technology that relate to free energy and all the technologies that Dan talks about and what everybody in this group is talking about. And that was actually offered to a lot of high-level people that were in those kind of positions. And he began to work with those star beings. And so that's in a book that was handed to me. It's never been published. I don't have fixed beliefs. I'm just sharing everything that I've learned. I put it all in my book, and it's sort of up to the reader to decide what they resonate with most. But the most important thing and the message that I've taken away, just being a member of this family, is that we've got it within ourselves. We're going to join together. We're going to unify. We're going to pool our resources together. And then in exposing all this, it's going to give each of those leaders a chance to say they've either been blackmailed, they've been compromised by MK Ultra, they've been compromised by SRA, and to take the leadership of like a Kathy O'Brien, somebody who has been able to break through that, the SSP people that have been whistleblowers, that they are going to be and they already are, such an incredible force of leadership on the planet right now to help those that are in these governmental positions or in these higher up positions begin to help us to assist them in breaking free, because they're not really operating from a soul level. And I think that is going to be a huge part of the rehabilitation and the rising of a new kind of structure that's in connection with cosmic natural law. And that is living very close in harmony with nature and our unfolding and awakening divine blueprint. Like you said, the awakening and embodied angelic races that have been, targeted for a really long time. And we are the more advanced technology. So yes, I have heard all sorts of things, but through synchronicities and understanding also the Truman, Churchill, and Hitler connection, there was a lot that was already established to begin to allow mass abduction of humans, and it wasn't under him. But I know he just stays real close and is very heartbroken about how, things have been, turning around, and is trying to get my attention to not give up. And I certainly won't, especially being with all of you, and just the love and the healing and the rising above, that is really where the power's at. So
beautiful, Laura. And you're so right. And thank you for raising also Kathy O'Brien's name. I just received a beautiful letter from her this morning. We conduct this ongoing love affair and write to each other constantly, have done for a couple of years. And I just absolutely adore this woman. I've spent some really good time with her in the last couple of years. Marina, I wanted to bring you in here because there's a lot here for you to digested, but yeah, your comments and thoughts and feedback.
Well, the structure of the universal form is looked into fractally and is looked into the collective. If you look at fractally, you will be able to see a lot of tuning frequency that are coherent and similar resonance. And when you tune in into this one, for example, your planet Earth or different extraterrestrials, each one has its own evolutionary process within consciousness itself. And if you look at individually, that coherent resonance for itself can get in very dark layers of multiple realities and dimensions. And if you start continuously tuning into this, or maybe that, you fluctuate in the realities, and you actually can trap yourself between the drama of each individual reality for itself, planetary, off-planetary, or literally individual. But if you look at the entire system of consciousness within the cell, like a being for itself of coherent resonance that is a 1 ohm sound of resonance, then you will bring this off-balance incoherent resonance into one evolutionary process. Look at from above, know that all that so-called bliss you talk about it, or heart frequency is within, feel that energetic field in each reality from that point of view, based on evolution through your perception, will change the resonance down the line when all of it is going to be in alignment. And when it's in alignment, that coherent resonance in now each individual platform will be able to convert itself in a higher fractal of existence for itself. So it's going to reprint itself in a better position in coherent resonance towards ascension. So instead of looking planet Earth or of extraterrestrials, in which individual race they've been doing because of the dark forces that they've been implemented there, look at it from above of consciousness itself, because if these races end up implementing themselves within the structure of consciousness, so consciousness created fractally part of itself, reprinting something by learning process. So unite in individual coherent resonance through the bliss, through the love, and each reality based on that is that focusing on who did what and how they did it is good to know history. But once you know history, focus on unity structure, unite and combine your ideas together. And this is how you're going to create the next step of evolution, projecting individually, because your ascension is not only individual, but is also within the collective consciousness itself.
Beautiful. Thank you very much indeed. I appreciate those words. Dan, forgive me, I want to put this to the panel, but it's kind of, I was thinking of Dan as I was reflecting on this early this week. I was part of an interesting conversation which included the chairman of Bitcoin, who's a very, very brilliant individual. And what emerged, he said that that the future currency that we're looking at is going to be predicated on he had different notions of what value was, but he said karma was going to really define the value of stuff moving forward, because with this galactic fusion point that we're reaching, when there's going to be at the terrestrial level, I guess we would think in terms of quantum financial systems and zeroing out debt and nullifying and negating the old pyramids of power and universal abundance incomes and all of that, delightful sounding stuff. So in a world where we do emulate our Andromedan or Pleiadian or Alpha Centaurian brethren, and we do take out of the equation blood economics and scarcity and what have you, and we have universal abundance around with us, what is going to play out as the new currency? Well, the chairman of Bitcoin told me it's going to be based on karma. That was interesting. I mean, I thought, wow, that's an interesting spin. I disagreed. I said, and I think that it is going to be stories. It's going to be, when we're all the same, and we all have access to the same immortality, and we all have the same access to limitless bliss and all the rest of it, surely it's going to be the telling of tales. Surely it's going to be the stories that cascade through our blood to the here and now. So would you agree with that, Dan? I'll throw that to you first, but I also want to get Dr. Sala's take on this, on what the new currency is likely to be when we all do reach that galactic fusion point, and we're not wanting for anything. We all know the story about Al-Bilik. We all know about how it talks about flipping to the future 25,000 years or however many years it was. and a completely blissful egalitarian society was proliferating there with a great big digitized holographic brain sphere thing that was doing the judging of people, you know, but everyone got into a malaise. There was a kind of boredom that set in. So yeah, that's my question, really. It's a very abstruse one, but what is the currency likely to be once we reach that bliss peak wave, as Dan Winter would put it?
You know, they say that money was just a symbol for human energy in service. And the more service rendered, the more, you know, that's the measurement of value. And that's a real way to talk about money. And yet, you know, the Draco measures their power by whether their presence feels like a vice-like grip so strong that it can actually kill a human. So if you quantified consciousness, it is how the vice-like grip of the plasma domain is compressing, and that can be quantified. But karma actually is a long-term name for the fact that whether the distribution is in fact efficient. In fact, charge distribution efficiency is about the only definition of consciousness and economics, really. So you know, our fractaleconomics.net, if you ever looked at that actually the fractal arrangement of the distribution of service. So I would say it has some relation. Karma is just another name for, is your aura propagating efficiently? And lucid dreaming is another name for, is your aura propagating efficiently? And your service. Another way to put this, let me put this another. When Jasmine was teaching how to live without food, you know, you'd sit in nature and be grounded and all that stuff. But one of the things she's taught was, well, you need to be doing for the major part of your day whatever it is you yourself believe is your highest level of service. And if you're doing that, then you won't need food.
Okay, I like it. That works for me. That works for me. Michael, any comments on this abstruse subject of the new human, or the resurrection of the angelic human reaching this idyll, and what then will define or differentiate one soul from another in that utopian egalitarian galactic fusion? Oh, you need to unmute. We can't hear you.
Sorry, yeah, I'd really like the discussion you're having in terms of the new currency. And I think it does relate to this new human, that the new currency is going to be something along the lines of, I think, memories. And look, there was a scene in the Radu Cinema book series, Transylvania Sunrise, and it concerned Radu Cinema going into this hall of records. I think it was the one in Egypt under the Giza pyramid or near there. And he says he went in there, and there was these walls where there were, he said, I think it was like 50,000 of these kind of like crystal discs, and that you would take one out and you would put it into this machine, and it would play out the kind of holographically some scene. And so, you know, to me, this is like stories, like you were saying, stories or memories. This is the new currency. That's what's coming. And I think as you were saying, as we evolve into our full angelic human consciousness, that the thing that we will value most are these stories, are these memories that we each have and that we can share. And that some of us will just have a much greater variety of experiences, memories that we can share. And I think that will be, it's a really kind of nice way of looking at it, that, you know, the richest among us will be those that have the most experiences to share with others, the most memories. And it's really beautiful, because it means it's a constant sharing of information, and it's something that can be traded. And I remember there was an episode in, I can't remember which of the Star Trek series, it might have been, I think it was the Voyager series, where they went onto a planet, and it was like the planet traded in memories or stories, that this was of great value. And so they bartered the records on the Enterprise or the Voyager spacecraft to get to get some commodity from this planet. So yeah, I think stories, memories. This is the future currency, and that's, I guess, part of this evolution of the new human as we start to reconnect with our true self, our higher self. We start remembering the many thousands, hundreds of thousands of lives we've spent on other planets, in other star systems, or as planets or as suns, and that we've chosen to come here on Earth to be part of this adventure. And as we start to remember who we truly are, we have all of these incredible stories and memories that we can share with others.
Indeed. And Michael, whilst we've got you, we did a film last year on space arcs, which was very, very popular and went somewhat viral. And of course, you're the authority on this. What role, just to encapsulate that intriguing subject, what role does or will space arcs be playing in this paradigmatic shift that is upon us?
Well, it all depends on us, really. If we manifest some global cataclysm, then the space arcs will be used to ferry as many humans as want to be part of that experience off to somewhere else. Or if we manifest a future that recognizes the contribution everyone can make and we get rid of the deep state, then these space arcs will share their technologies and share the incredible records that they have, because these space arcs are records. I mean, they are kind of like a living hall of record that has an organic consciousness responsible for the entire craft, and it's being used in past civilizations to seed new civilizations. Like, that's how Atlantis was seeded. There was a space arc that was at the root of the Atlantean civilization, and I think this is what we are heading towards as we awaken, as all these deals are being struck, as the Earth Alliance works with the galactics to kind of like raise humanity, kicking and screaming out of this kind of insular society, planetary culture that we have, into a galactic civilization. Then we are going to have all of this information presented to us. And if we can cope with it, if we can adjust it in a harmonious way, then I think the arcs will be used to seed incredible consciousness. Now, if there's portions of humanity that want to stick to kind of religious dogma and are not going to accept a lot of the information that the extraterrestrial visitors and the crypto-terrestrials have to offer, some will choose to leave the planet, and the space arcs might be how they can leave the planet and start off somewhere else.
Very good. Dan, what do you know about space arcs?
Well, I was just going to say, I spent years studying the physics of the Ark of the Covenant shortly after I studied the physics of Tesla's carbon arc. And the carbon arc is how Tesla learned to propagate longitudinals, actually, the fullerene story. And the Ark of the Covenant was, in a sense, literally the perfect capacity. It's capacitive implosion originally. I know where you're saying, well, these are memory devices from ancient Atlantis. I agree with that. But the concept of arc, in principle, starts with the physics of that arc was a phase conjugator, meaning you could use it to make gold powder. You could use it as a mercy seat in which a plasma intelligence could inhabit. You could use it to, stabilize monatomic gold and make Holy Communion. You could use it to non-destructively contain radioactivity. So the perfect arc actually electrically is a name for the perfect memory container, if you understand what a phase conjugate arc is.
Very good. Okay, friends, I want to invite each of you, as I've got some brilliant minds and hearts here. Does anyone have any questions for any of these other brilliant pundits on this panel? I mean, I'm happy to continue putting questions out, but I figured it's kind of rude. I figured that whilst we've got you all here, maybe you wanted to ask something of each other. No? No
well,
takers?
I have a question, and that is when we are talking about a soul consciousness, or a soul that can be fragmented into many different, there's soul splicing. I recall Randy Kramer saying that from one soul you can splice off 10,000 fragments, and that these can be used to animate clones. So yeah, that's the question I have, is like, well, if you have one soul, can that be actually fragmented into 10,000 fragments that can then be used to activate, say, a clone army?
Well, I think, Dr. Sala, you know that most of the SSP reporters talking about that say they parasitically use trauma to split the souls into fragment, and it wasn't a healthy thing at all. And even another thing we might say is that Elena and others have agreed that even using stargates and portals is somewhat soul fractionating. So the actual implosive coherence of plasma that we call soul, for example, the intelligence that inhabits and steers the moon and steers Nibiru and steers the heart of the earth and the heart of the sun. We know the geometry, that Anu slipknot plasma intelligence shape, and it is not designed for division. No, that's my short comment, actually. That was a pathologic, for the soul stealing Draco. Yeah, but healthy? No, that's my thought.
Okay, very interesting. Yes.
I was just going to add, I mean, if you're fragmenting, soul energy, you're using the creativity or the manifestation abilities of that fragmented soul. And if you look at the bigger picture of the Sophionic energy, the Akamoth, how it was bound to like the 2D put in reversals, this whole Baphomet worshiping, the Dark Mother reversal grid energies, and all the different aspects of our galactic history that has been kept from us, and rewritten history that causes us to reflect upon memories that aren't even real. So how can we really heal? This fragmentation has been such a huge thing for us to begin to integrate, even as a collective, to, all like kind of put the pieces, back together to rebuild the 12-strand DNA, which, our zodiac chart with 12 houses and 12 signs shows. Now with the 13th sign, this integration process is even easier. So I would say that, using any, fragment of soul is to harness and take that creative power from that being. But there's a magnetic pull to return to wholeness, to get your missing parts, to reclaim them. And I feel that is encoded in nature. It's encoded in our consciousness to be on that path, no matter how long it takes us to get there. I just wanted to add that.
Wonderful. Love that. Thank you so much. I had a curious message came through yesterday from a friend of mine through the social media spheres called Jane Vaughan. And the question was, and actually she was asking me to put this to Dan, but I don't think she was aware that I had Laura and Dr. Sala and Marina here for today's panel. And the memo is as follows. It says, 3 of us, we wonder if you could shed light on an incident that happened to us. 3 of us witnessed a normal man morph into a 15 to 18-foot giant. His name is Peter Tarleton, a high energy being who has had Pleiadian contact, I understand it, from observing spaceships from the age of 30. We were in a glass conservatory when the incident happened, and all 3 of us witnessed a different morphed being. Joe saw a being with blonde hair, blue eyes. He was transparent, holographic. She could see the conservatory building through his body. And Jane, who wrote the note to me, saw a being with dark golden brown, long layered hair with blue eyes, not transparent. And Analia, who's age 12, saw a being with slick back, wet, dark hair, green reptilian eyes, not transparent. Peter, the subject, was unaware of what we saw, but was aware that he had morphed. And has since told us that there was a ship above us when we entered into the conservatory. We experienced a memory wipe about the incident for several hours. We're still in contact with Peter, but they're asking, they're saying that Joe is continuously experiencing energetic auric fields of gold, white, and clear sparkly light on a daily basis since shaking this chap's hand, Peter, who morphed into 3 separate entities. We can't get our heads around why we saw 3 different beings. Would you be able to explain? Can anyone help us to understand? It's an interesting one. Any takers?
Something to do with oversoul, when Diana said that Queen Elizabeth morphed. Well, I think a lot of people, when I was young, people always saw me with a cowl, and I realized I had too many past lives as a priest, so I morphed a few times. They saw my past lives. Well, there are shadows in the plasma of the various entities present in our evolution. That'd be one comment. But another thing I would say was any kind of memory wipe is really a bad sign. That I would think that as well.
Well, that's a good takeaway. I think that's a really good takeaway. Any sign of a memory wipe is a bad experience by distinction, because it was a violation of critical sovereignty. End of story. Yeah, I like that. Very good. Okay, Laura, I wanted to bring in astrology here, and I wanted to invite you to explain to us how and if you believe astrology can play a role in the future. I mean, if we're moving beyond 1260 time, we're moving beyond circadian rhythms, we're moving beyond the kind of cycles and movements of the spheres as we've commonly understood them for millennia. My understanding is that a true paradigmatic shift as we springboard into ascension means a departure from much of the metric that has defined our glimpses of reality. Do you agree with that, or do you think astrology will evolve into something even greater?
Yeah, I think it's already evolving. There's zodiac alterations that are incorporating, the ether element. Ophiuchus, the 13th sign, the sun started to move through Ophiuchus in 2010. And that ether element being corrected out of the reversals that are symbolic of the inverted pentagram have allowed for the Saturn squares and some of the really tough oppositions and some of the difficult aspects that people have in their zodiac chart to begin to dissolve and not have so much power and control over them. And I see a zodiac chart almost like a treasure map, bringing us into the 0-point unified field. And that's kind of where X marks the spot. Once we overcome the patterning, we're not looping in it, we're not unconscious, we're not in autopilot, we're not just responding to the psyops and outer events that keep us looping in some of these lower octaves or aspects. And we begin to move into the initiations that the outer planets provide, Pluto, Uranus, and Neptune, which really is, switching on dormant DNA, awakening to our higher mind, our intuition, our creative imagination, the Plutonic Uranus energy, the electromagnetic spectrum, the fullness of spectrum of frequency that we have available to us to create and manifest from. It's going to begin to change, the zodiac that we are all born with. And with this alteration, we would want to sort of reset the energy and seeing how the presence of Ophiuchus and this ether element connected to Chiron has to do with connecting to unconditional love, not the reward punishment system, not lower creator gods, not religion, not outer authority that's manipulated us, that is literally dissolving. And the only remnants that remains is through like the epigenetics principle, our belief in what is being thrown at us. But it's no longer something that our fallen Milky Way system is holding, or the planetary grid network, in the damage in the reversal grids that through osmosis we were taking on. We've like overcome that. So in that, the zodiac is shifting and changing. And I think a mindful, conscious person doesn't even need it, but as a tool for self-development and self-knowledge and even the medical aspect of astrology, it can be really helpful in this time of deprogramming. And then, it's just not necessary, unless you're just wondering what the heck's going on. It's a really, really helpful tool to understand, is this coming from past lives? Is this coming from, lineage? Is this coming from, and it can be very eye-opening, but it'll lose its necessity, I think, and it's up to the individual. Some don't feel they need it in this life. Some do. But I think it's going to be a helpful tool, especially for this younger generation, like Dan was talking about. The level of targeting and separation from soul matrix, I think it's really helpful when I work with parents and their children to understand what is actually happening and to actually see the data. So I think it's helpful up to a certain point, then it won't be even necessary.
Very good. Thank you. Marina, I wanted to ask you, as far as technology is concerned, what is your understanding of technology fusing into consciousness? I know that you're very focused on extraterrestrial technologies and quantum manifestation, and you're kind of playing an extraordinary role there. Can you just elaborate on what your critical focus is as it relates to consciousness, extraterrestrials, and technology?
Well, what I was told from the extraterrestrials, and then I was connected with the Council of Nine, which are basically like, for example, Supreme Court that oversee ETs and individual planetary systems like humans. They basically can change your soul contract. They can do a lot of actually stuff, and they are basically connected from a different planetary systems, very advanced souls. It's actually a hierarchy within these systems where your soul is basically fragment. May I interact with that stuff? Because if you fragmented somebody's soul, basically they told me 40% will stay in a certain location. I'm not talking about how many times. I was told by percentage. Because if you have to enter, for example, the planet Earth, the soul of that individual that is so collective and so smart, for example, is so knowledgeable, it has all the memory, has to be fragmented from a positive point of view in order to enter certain planetary system because of the level, the stargate, the grid that is there, and to be able to hold the memory. That's what they were explaining to me when I was connected with all the stuff. And then they had to, because I had to basically download information how from the ether you can create a meta structure. The bridge, basically the quantum manifestation protocols are basically that were given from them are the bridge and the key of the basically how you manifest, how you construct, deconstruct, and what is the relation between ether and matter, how you actually switch realities, how actually can shift and create a new timelines and parallel realities. And that was the key of creation, the metaphysics, the chemical structure of everything you do within the physical to go into the ether and vice versa. Because your body, your consciousness can become a vessel of shifting realities. You may use the technologies because it's part of evolution. We have a trajectory of evolution that is a learning process of consciousness itself, to know itself, to create something, not to be too boring, for example, if we look at it from, just watching a movie. But it's actually consciousness, it has its own evolutionary process. And if you create an aspect of yourself, you actually create different realities. So it's very important for us to know how we can manifest, construct, and deconstruct the realities. That is connected with metaphysics, that is connected with spirit, with the spirit, to know what the soul is. There are different aspects of the soul, how they're fragmented and what realities that they're experiencing. But the ultimate thing is that what they told me, no matter what type of fragmentation, no matter what type of experience, we have to understand that each of these souls, each of these experiences is actually a fraction and reflection of God's source itself in one unit. And that one unit could be a galaxy, could be individual, could be a somebody, bloodline, of family timelines, and that is an experience from consciousness. But all of the above, they're actually fractal expression of consciousness itself. So it's never separated. It is a finger, for example, of the body of consciousness, whatever that is. So it's always part of it. So when it's ascension, consciousness will bring all this reality in coherent resonance, and no matter what is happening through synchronicities of this individual people's life or planetary systems or galaxies, everything is going to become coherent through different situations and expressions of itself that will pull itself back to basically new level of expansion of an coherent awareness. And that's what's really happening. So no matter how we look at it, and no matter what type of a race is, and how it's happening, who's hiding, fighting with who, and how you don't like this person or like this person, the most important thing is to stay centered and to completely understand how we can transform the realities and shift the timelines, because then you are the driver of your experience and not the basically the passenger. And that's what is the most important thing for me. So I look at it from like a watching a movie. Each person, no matter if President Trump or somebody else, is actually part of that process of evolution, even if some of the stuff doesn't make really sense to us. But all of the above is actually literally created from consciousness itself, of self-expression, to pull itself, because the positive, they told me, positive frequency sound wave is actually by the power of 10 more potent on resonance than the negative low rumble.
Very good. Beautiful. Thank you very much indeed.
Mhm.
And turning to the audience, there's a segment coming up, an hour-long segment with Marina Jacobi, so stay tuned for that. And as we come to the close of this galactic status report, I just have a distinct question for Laura and for Michael and for Dan. We began almost getting on for 2 hours ago, speaking about, I asked, what is the health check of humanity, health status of humanity? But this question, closing question, it's connected to really the next span of time, the next 7 years or 8 years leading up to 2032. I don't know if Laura, for instance, is going to corroborate this, but I've heard it now on so many fronts that it's becoming for me a very, very deep and meaningful timeline, or a dateline zero, is that 2032 is most likely to be the upshift point where we get received, as it were, into the Galactic Confederation of Worlds. I've heard this from so many different sources. I don't particularly want to debate that piece, but I'm taking that as a marker in my own scheduling in my own head. And if 2032 is likely to be a dateline for the upshift and our reconvention with the star nations, so to speak, as a species now fully stepping into actualization, and stepping into this extraordinary covenant that each fractal individual human has been sworn to, as well as the morphogenetic collective, which is that we are the cross, we are the grail, we are the tabernacle, the sepulcher, all of these holy of holies. It's all contained in the atom seed of the Atman, of the fully realized human, or the resurrected human, as I would put it, which is why this fucking story of, constant purging and dying and resurrecting, and Lazarus is why I named this initiative after it. It's a theme that sings in the human. The hero's journey is something so deep that every human being, no matter how great and no matter how ignoble, we could be smoking crack under a newspaper, downtown Chicago. We could be a billionaire sailing on the Pacific on his $1 billion yacht, and reflecting on how extraordinary and beautiful life is. It doesn't really matter about that. Within the atom seed of each one of us, the pulse of humanity is the hero's journey. And each of us are the hero, as indeed each of us are the villain, and each of us are the Messiah as well. And that's really the privilege that I'm speaking to here in this conversation with this group of noble souls and pioneering souls, is speaking to that aspect of the immanent aspect of the true human, the realized human, which is that we're taking it from here. We're about to stagger to our feet and crown ourselves and take the throne ourselves and step up as sons and daughters of God, is the kind of colloquial language that I like to use with my Middle American brethren, people with pitchforks and Bibles and guns. I've always trusted them. But my question to Laura and to Dan and to Dr. Michael Sala is, what is likely to really transpire in the course of the next 7 years between now and 2032? I'm just keen to invite your perspective on what you envision the world may look like in 2032. I'll start with you, Michael.
I think by 2030, 2032, we're going to be living in what we would consider to be a kind of like Star Trek society, where a lot of the advanced technologies have been revealed. The extraterrestrial presence will have been disclosed. That the US Navy Solar Warden program is something that is global, in terms of people from many nations will be joining that, enlisting in that, and that will be part of this kind of like fleet of craft going out into the further reaches of our solar system, into other solar system, helping create colonies. The corporations are going to be out there doing their thing in developing these advanced technologies. So on the one hand, what we're going to have is a very high-tech world where a lot of resources and a lot of attention is going to go off planet to build colonies and to really kind of like spread our wings as a galactic civilization. And I think that there's going to be a lot of kind of attention to try and get people to buy into that as really being something good and something positive, and that this kind of a future, this Star Trek future, is something that we need to invest in. But what I think a lot of people are going to start realizing is that really this is giving our power away to highly organized institutions, running the space fleets, that are building the technologies, that are in charge of these colonies, that people that buy into that are really giving their power away. And I think that you will have a kind of like a counterculture, if you like, of people that understand that our true power comes from, connecting with our fractal representation of the omniverse, that we connect with the consciousness of the planet, of Gaia, of the consciousness of the sun, and the consciousness of the galactic sun, the central sun. And so in that sense, it'll be kind of like there will be those that will be developing consciousness and developing technologies of consciousness, and kind of like Jedi Knights. And I think that's a positive thing. That's the sort of thing I would like to nurture, and I imagine many of those in this panel would kind of consider that to be more along the lines of what we like embrace in terms of values and aspirations. But definitely I see that's going to be the challenge. That on the one hand, you're going to have this kind of like Star Trek future, which is going to be very much a techno-centric civilization where people are being encouraged to give their power away to all this advanced technology. And there will be this kind of countervailing movement where it's like, okay, no, it's all about consciousness, connecting with our soul essence, understanding that we are fractals of the omniverse. And I think that's going to be the big challenge as we get into 2030.
Beautiful. Thanks so much. That's beautifully stated, Michael. Dan, Michael's heading full tilt into Dr. Spock and Captain Kirk territory. 2032, you wake up, rub your eyes, look at a beautiful sunrise in southern France. How's the world going to look in 2032?
Well, I wanted to say that when I was young, I worked with a group called the Reverend Mothers, who were right out of Dune, and they could, see the whatever. And they said that I was Lazarus. I studied that. And I said, the lays are us. That it's actually a laser phenomena that enables longitudinal coherence to go through death and wake up as Lazarus. Now, I see, I've been studying the physics of death for all my life. And we know exactly why death visions are contagious, et cetera, et cetera. We know that why successful death requires a black hole compression, because you can't get into the array otherwise. Inhabit the array. Now, I see a near-death experience coming for the planet, actually. For example, there's 1,000 ways you can imagine, but one is conventional physics is quite positive that at least a magnetic, if not physical, but a magnetic pole reversal is imminent for the next 15 years. That's conventional physics. And magnetic pole reversal is probably very likely species. It could be species. It's literally a near-death experience in the sense that at the still point in the center, to inhabit a still point when the galactic radiation is not shielded from the Earth is absolutely a near-death experience. whether that's right or not, here's my intuition. And that is that the skill and power and service that's needed to survive those years, these upcoming years, is literally, for example, the ability, you find your magnetic line cross, your sacred space, wherever it is, hopefully get the hell out of the city. And at the magnetic line cross that you should inhabit like a grid, like the synapses of your brain, but it's the synapses of the planet, you close your eyes at your sacred space and learn to use that magnetic line as your eyeballs. Like I was in this French cathedral, closed my eyes, and I could see the waterfall where the magnetic line through the church came from. It was just like looking in a hologram because I was at the center of a sacred space and I could see into the array. I'm saying Lazarus inhabits the array to get through death. And I think finding your sacred space on the array is essential to get to 2030, because I think we've got some messy time. I mean, the US government isn't going to take easily to the fact they have to admit they lost World War II and millions of people got abducted because of their stupid. So that isn't going to come easily, this disclosure. No, it's going to be a near-death experience for somebody. And so however it shakes out, I see near-death experiences coming. And to prepare for that, cities ain't going to work. And inhabiting the array is. This is my thought.
Okay, well, that's a brilliant take. I mean, I have to say, from Star Trek's holodeck to kind
exactly.
of
Inhabit the holodeck.
Planetary NDE. But
absolutely.
Just to share with the audience, this is what Dan was referring to earlier.
Yes,
before we began the show, I showed him this is the equivalent of an Anunnaki big dick, incidentally. You know, two Anunnaki walk into a bar, right? You pull that out. Yeah, it's fabulous. Thank you, Dan. I greatly appreciate the NDE piece. Laura, what do you make of that? I mean, it's between Michael Sala's 2032 vision and Dan's didn't exactly give me his vision, but he just expressed or described what is likely, or in his puritanical scientific mind, will have to take place and take effect before any ascension takes place. There will be an NDE. What's your take on 2032?
Wow, yeah, gosh, following those both of you, and what you said was so amazing. Yeah, I mean, I think the near-death experience is major. We have a Saturn conjunct Chiron square Pluto. We already have Chiron square Pluto, and what does that mean? An intensification of like toxicity and the need to release and let go, like getting to a critical point in which you can't move any further down a certain trajectory without the soul's last attempt to get your attention. You know, that's kind of like a life review. That's like really, really looking at your agreements, what you're consenting to, what your belief systems are holding. And as we move into this next year, Saturn in Aries, Neptune in Aries, the nodal shift, which the eclipses activate, it's going to be North Node Pisces, South Node Virgo. So South Node is what we're reflecting upon. North Node is where we're heading as the next growth period. Then it's going to go to Aquarius North Node, and Pluto already moved into Aquarius. So by that point in 2032, we're going to be well on our way of seeing this rebirth through the Aquarian energy, Uranus energy of sovereignty and living your truth, but also the shadow side of technology, the dark side of technology, which is transhumanism. So what choices are people making? Right now, the choices are, when facing the negative ego with the North Node in Aries and Chiron in Aries, are we able to look at those wounds? Are we the wounded warrior, the wounded truther, or the wounded identity that has taken on a socially engineered version, or a version that is not really your truth? And so in this next year, it'll be about this Pluto square Chiron and the intensity of needing to clear, needing to heal, needing to resolve. And the body, mind, spirit communication is going to be really, really strong. So when you were mentioning health, it's going to have everything to do with mental health, your communication with your physical body. Can you look at dis-ease and see it as an opportunity to get closer to yourself? Or are you going to still consent to the problem, reaction, solution game being played, which will, attempt to have its next version, right? There'll always be like some kind of next version, but it depends upon the consent and the feeding of it and the compliancy and the relationship that is formed with it to even engineer these artificial timelines. So it'll be a time for breakthrough. And then what world are you in on the other side of that? Well, if we can drop the fear of death and know that we're here and remember that we're here for spiritual and soul development, it won't even matter, because we'll know that no matter whether we survive this or not, we are moving on to a higher category Earth, or a new experience, or an experience that is going to reflect the growth that we allowed, the awakening that we allowed. So I think we're going to see an ascending Earth. But is it going to look the same for all of us? Is it going to be on this particular planet that we're waking up to every day? Is it going to be some death experience and we wake up somewhere else in a higher Earth energy that we got transported to? Do we get, it's like there's no way to really predict. But the most important thing is that we pay attention, because Virgo is ruled by Mercury. And it's an earth sign, has to do with our physiology, has to do with what belief systems do we hold that our body is not thriving in. And if we can look at that adversity and see it as a wake-up call, we can actually not fear disease and give our power away. We can realize the roots of it. We can get in touch with our past lives, our galactic history, and who we truly are, and leverage dis-ease to find true wellness. And that is the breaking of the mind control on the planet right now. So we should be in 2032 at a very, very empowered place, much more self-sufficient, much more self-reliant, much more our own healer, guru, and authority, making the rules for ourselves with a heightened aspect of Saturn, which is self-mastery, that has literally cut all ties and cut all cords with any kind of inversion, and is seeing the world reflect back what's encoded in nature, and the beautiful possibilities that we have experienced in higher advanced civilizations, with the remembrance and the lessons that we've learned to be able to maintain it for a lot longer than we've seen in the past.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Laura. And guys, thank you so very much. As I said to you, to the audience, I've got Marina Jacobi for an hour coming up in a segment, so stay tuned for that. And she speaks at great length to her vision of what's upcoming for humanity. So all it remains for me to do is to say thank you, Laura, beloved Laura Eisenhower. Thank you so much. Dan Winter, thank you. Dr. Michael Salla, thank you so very much for joining us. Marina, thank you.
Blessings, blessings.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for being here.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
A joy to share. Thank you. Thank you.
God bless. Bye-bye. All right, friends. I'm going to queue up the next slide, and Christy, producer, will take it from there. Thank you. Well, friends, today, the sphere of Amenti and other way signs to ascension with my beloved brother in arms, Dave Emery. Dave, let me bring you in from the studio. How are you this fine day?
I'm very fine, thank you. I'm talking to you now from the United States of America. So I have made a trip. It's awesome.
You're finally there. You're finally there in Middle Earth.
Yes, exactly.
That's wonderful. Well, Dave, look, by way of introduction, today we're going to be on a journey through cosmic history and the intricate processes that have shaped our path back to our true identity as God's source energies. And from the initial distortions and hijacking of our ascension process to the activation of the fail-safe protocols, we delve into the celestial mechanisms designed to reclaim our birthright of ascension. So in this installment of our evolving series of talks together, Dave and I will seek to uncover the mysteries of the sphere of Amenti, the crystal bridge passage, and the profound cosmic events guiding us toward our ultimate destiny. Dave, the obvious question is the sphere of Amenti. What is it? It sounds incredibly enigmatic.
Well, the sphere of Amenti is actually a morphogenetic sphere field, a consciousness field into which we can expand our consciousnesses and eventually ascend the stairway to heaven, as we were always meant to do. Now, the reason why there is a sphere of Amenti as the morphological field for humanity is simply because originally we were blasted out of a planetary system long ago, and we resurfaced in what we now call Earth. So we arrived